it's Miss Christina. Welcome back to week 2 of our video series called Defined, Who God Says You Are. Make sure that you have your activity book with you and let's get started. Before we jump into our week 2 lesson, let's go ahead and review what we learned last week. Our topic of discussion was created by God, and we learned that we were created by God in His image. And so being made in God's image isn't really about how we look, but it's about who we are and what we were created to do. The Bible helps us to know what being created in God's image means. And the more that we study the Bible and the more that we learn about who God is, the more we learn about ourselves and about who we were created to be. We also learned about something called identity and purpose. Our identity is who we are, and our purpose is what we were created to do. And so God has only ever created one Christina Lynn Morse. No one else that has ever or will ever live on this planet will be created exactly like me or do exactly what God has created me to do. The same goes for you. You were created by God with a special identity and purpose. No one else will ever be able to be exactly like you or do exactly what you were created to do. And I think that's pretty cool. So this week, week 2, we're going to be learning about broken by sin. I want you to go ahead and open your activity books to page 14. This week, our lesson is called Broken by Sin. Go ahead and turn to page 14 in your activity books. If you look right here underneath where it says broken by sin, we've got a definition here for the word broken. Everybody say broken. All right, the definition says that broken is something that has been torn or fragmented. So we've all seen something that's broken, right? When I think of the word broken, I think of shattered pieces of glass of a vase that fell on the ground, or I think about a ripped page in a book, or a fallen branch that fell off the tree, or I think about broken bones. Miss Christina really doesn't like broken bones. So when we use the word broken, we're talking about something that was supposed to be whole or something that was supposed to be together that is now separated or pulled apart. Our book says when people sin, they tear or break their relationship they had with God. They are separated from God by their sin. We actually have a little motion that we like to do when we talk about that, about how sin separates us from God. We put our hands in front of our face just like this. This hand is going to represent God, and this hand is going to represent you and me. And so when we sinned, because God is holy and perfect, He can't be around sin, and so we're separated from God. So everybody put your hands together like this, and on the count of 3, we're going to show what happens when sin separates us from God. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Good job. So our hands move apart just like that. The next sentence in our book says the good news is that God's plan provides the answer to brokenness caused by sin. As we continue to do this study and to learn more about God, we're going to learn that God didn't leave us here, but actually provided a way for us to get back here. If you look down at the bottom of page 14, you'll see the words know, understand, and discover. And as we continue through our lesson, we're going to learn about these concepts. So let's read them before we get to our Bible story. Under the word know, it says that through this lesson, we're going to learn that sin is to think, say, or behave in any way that goes against God and His commands. We've heard something very similar to that before, haven't we? We'll talk about that in just a minute. Under the word understand, it says all people are broken by sin. And under the word discover, it says before trusting Jesus, our identity is broken by our sin and our rebellion against God. So let's talk about rules for a second, okay? What is a rule? I actually looked up the definition of the word in the dictionary. And so a rule is a statement that tells you what is or what is not allowed. And so how many of you have ever had a rule that you've had to follow? I have. Let's think about some for a minute. What is a rule that you've had to follow? So maybe at home you have a rule that you have to be in bed by a certain time every single night. Maybe it's 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, all right? What about if we leave our houses and go to the store or to church or to school? Maybe your family has a rule that says you have to look both ways before crossing the street. How many of you have that rule in your family? I think that's a pretty good one. What about at school? Once you get to school, how many of you have rules at school? Maybe a rule in your classroom is that you have to raise your hand before speaking. That's our rule at church too. When you're in our classes, you have to raise your hand before speaking because otherwise everybody would just talk over everybody, okay? So I have another question for you. How many of you have ever broken a rule? Yeah, Miss Christina has too. As I was preparing this lesson and thinking about rules, I actually texted my mom and I said, "Hey mom, when I was a little girl, what was a rule that I broke and what were the consequences for that?" And so she thought of something and she told me a story, and I'm actually going to share that story with you guys right now. When I was a little girl, we would be playing outside all the time. Sometimes we would be riding our bikes or our scooters around the block. We'd be climbing trees, playing basketball. We'd go to visit neighbors or sometimes go play at friends' houses, and we were always outside playing. And so our family rule was that if we were playing and we were going to leave the yard, we had to go check in with mom and dad. We had to ask them if that's okay and then tell them where we're going so they could keep track of us, right? That makes sense. That's a pretty good rule. Well, one day I am playing outside and a friend came over who I hadn't seen in a really long time, and she wanted to ask if I could go to her house and play for a couple hours. And so I was so excited and I said, "Yeah, that would be awesome." So I went with her over to her house and, we spent the afternoon playing. Well, meanwhile, I forgot to tell my parents that I had gone over to her house. I didn't ask their permission. Like, I just went. And so a little while after I left, they start looking for me and they can't find me anywhere. Now, funny little part to this story. I don't remember this, but my mom says that I used to really like taking naps in random places, which I think is hilarious. Sometimes I would take a nap in my bed, but sometimes I would take a nap under my bed. Or maybe I would find a place outside to take a nap, or I don't know. I guess I just took naps in really weird places, which is hilarious because I really do love naps. But so I guess my family was thinking that I fell asleep somewhere and I couldn't hear them calling my name. So they're looking everywhere. They can't find me. Eventually, they send my sister down to another friend's house. They're looking at neighbors' houses. They are panicking. They're looking everywhere for me, and I am nowhere to be found. And so I'm playing. I'm having fun at a friend's house. Like, I don't know any of this is going on. Meanwhile, they are freaking out. They are so worried that something bad has happened to me. And so, guys, I totally broke that rule. I did not tell my parents where they were, and that caused where I was, and that caused them to be really worried about me, And when I got home, my mom said that I was grounded for a couple days, that I wasn't allowed to leave the house at all, and that was my punishment for breaking that rule, which that makes sense, right? So guys, even Miss Christina has broken rules now. As an adult, I break rules sometimes, but when I was a little girl, there's a story of something that I did. I broke a rule. All right, so now I want you guys to think about a rule that you have broken. What's something that you have done that you were told not to do? All right. Maybe at home you have a rule not to hit your brother or sister, but how many of you have ever done that anyway? Okay. What about at school? How many of you have ever been told not to look at another student's paper as you guys have been taking a quiz or a test, but you did it anyway? Yeah. How many of you have ever been told not to touch something, but you did it anyway? Yeah, so guys, we've all broken rules. Maybe not the exact rules that I just said, but I'm sure that you guys have broken rules before because we all mess up. We all make bad decisions. We all make mistakes sometimes. And so now we're going to go ahead and read our Bible story. And as I read, I want you to listen closely for a time when someone did not follow God's rules. So last week we looked at Genesis chapter 1 and 2 and read our Bible story about Adam and Eve. And how they were created in God's image. Today, we're going to continue that story in Genesis chapter 3, okay? So I want you to read along with me in your book. Open up to page 15 in your activity book, and let's read this story together. All right, friends, everybody say Genesis chapter 3. Good job. Let's read our story. And remember that you're listening for a time when someone broke God's rules, okay? So one day a serpent approached Eve. Everybody make a hissing sound like a snake would make. Hiss. Yeah, ooh, that sends shivers down my spine. So the serpent approached Eve and asked, "Did God really say you can't eat from any tree in the garden?" Think back to our story last week. Is that what God said? Did God say you can't eat from any tree in the garden? I don't think that's right. Let's keep reading. Eve corrected the serpent. That means that she told the snake what God really had said. We may eat fruit from any tree except one tree in the middle of the garden. What God really said was that you must not touch or eat that fruit or you will die. The fruit from that one tree they weren't allowed to eat, not all the trees. The serpent told Eve, "You won't die. In fact, God knows that when you eat it, that you will be more like him, knowing good and evil." How do you think Eve is feeling right now? God's telling her one thing and the serpent's telling her another thing. Do you think she might be a little confused, wondering what's true and what's not true? I think so. I think she also might be a little bit hungry. She's walking around in this garden. She was probably looking for food when the serpent approached her. Do you think she also might kind of be a little bit scared, wondering what would happen if I disobeyed God? Do you think she might be excited, thinking, if I listen to the serpent, I might be like God? I think that Eve is just feeling really confused right now. She's feeling a lot of things and, wondering what's true and what's not true. Have you ever felt like that? Yeah. All right, so let's keep reading. Eve looked at the fruit on the tree. She remembered that the serpent said the fruit would make her wise. How many of you have ever just kind of stared at something and were thinking as you were looking at it? How many of you have ever had mom or dad bake some fresh cookies, put them on the counter to cool, and said, "Don't touch them yet," but you've just been looking at them thinking, "Oh, I just really want to grab one of those cookies. They look so yummy." I think that's what Eve was doing right now. She was just looking at the fruit and thinking, trying to make her decision. Okay, let's see what happens. Eve took some of the fruit and ate it. She gave some to Adam and he ate it too. So guys, Eve broke God's rule when she ate the fruit. And then who else did she give the fruit to so that they would also break the rule? To Adam. So Adam and Eve have both broken God's rule now. Immediately, Adam and Eve realized what they had done. They tried to cover themselves and hide from God. That evening, God called out to Adam, "Where are you?" Do you remember where they were? "Did you eat from the tree I commanded you not to?" Everybody shake your head. That's exactly what they did. Eve said, "The serpent tricked me and I ate it." God told the serpent, "Because you have done this, you are cursed more than any other animal. You will move on your belly and eat dust." Then God told Eve, "You will have pain when you have a baby." God told Adam, "You must work hard to grow your food now, and one day you will die." God made Adam and Eve leave the garden. So, who disobeyed God in this story? Who was first? Eve. Who was second? Adam. And so there were consequences for their sin, weren't there? There were consequences for the serpent, for Eve, and for Adam. And then they were told that they have to leave the garden and that they could never come back. If you look back at page 14 in your books, remember the spot where it says know, understand, and discover? Well, let's talk about our Bible story and about these things that through our Bible story we're going to know, understand, and discover. So under the word know, it says that sin is to think, say, or behave in any way that goes against God's command. And so I mentioned earlier, how many of you have heard that before? Yeah, we say something really similar at our church. We say that sin is anything you think, say, or do that disobeys God. So it's the same thing, just maybe a couple words a little bit differently. And so Adam and Eve disobeyed God and sinned against him when they ate the fruit of the tree, didn't they? Everybody look under the word discover. It says all people are broken by sin. So ever since Adam and Eve sinned that very first time in the Garden of Eden, all people have followed and sinned as well, including you and me, right? Look under the word discover. It says, before trusting Jesus, our identity is broken by sin and rebellion against God. And so remember, guys, our identity is who we are. And so before trusting Jesus, who are we? We are sinners. And remember that God is holy and that he cannot be around sin. And so our relationship with him is broken and we're separated from him. Now, next week, we're going to learn that God doesn't want us to be separated from him. He wants a relationship with us. And so he sent his son Jesus to get us back, to fix our sin problem and change our hearts. And so he removes our identity of us being sinners and he gives us a new identity. And our new identity is that we are children of God. All right, friends, in your activity books on page 16 and 7, there are some fun little things that you can do right now to go along with the lesson that we just learned. Then on page 18 through 21, there are 5 days worth of devotions where each day you can sit down with your activity book and just spend some alone time with God. There are some questions for you to answer, some things for you to think about from our lesson, and each day you can just take that time and just pray and talk to God. And so I hope that you will do all of those things this week and then come back next week for lesson number 3. Before we go, let's take some time to just talk to God. So we're going to close our eyes, bow our heads, and clap on 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. God, we are all sinners. Help us to realize when Satan is tempting us to sin and help us to choose to always do the right thing. Thank you for loving us enough to provide a way for us to be forgiven of our sin through Jesus. Thank you for this Bible study we're doing together and for giving us these activity books. Lord, help us to spend time with you this week and to learn more about you each and every day. We love you and we thank you so much for sending Jesus to die on the cross for us. In your precious name we pray. Amen. All right, my friends, I'll see you next week. Bye.